Thank you for having me, Environmental Stewardship Program. I'm really excited to share with you about Coyote Creek's watershed and how it connects with the work that the Environmental Stewardship Program and Bay Alive are doing. I just titled it Revealing Biodiversity Through the Coyote Creek Watershed. How many of you know where Coyote Creek is? Can you just thumbs up or somehow let me know? So majority of you. I'm going to show you in a moment. You don't know, it's okay. I'll show you in a moment exactly where it is. So looking at me, I'll introduce myself. I'm the founder and executive director of Keep Coyote Creek Beautiful. I grew up in the Bay Area and I went to school at Cal. And I just love nature, and I get out as much as I can to either garden or hike or backpack. And this morning I went trail running. So I really love being outside. And the work that I do allows me to connect other people to nature. So today I'm just going to talk a little bit about Coyote Creek itself, also about about our organization, Keep Coyote Creek Beautiful, and thinking of the big picture about watersheds and ways to get involved as well as upcoming events. And I know you all are very well versed on how to get involved, and I'm going to encourage you to get involved with us. So let me start with Coyote Creek. It is a 64-mile long river. It starts at Henry Coe State Park and it winds through Coyote Valley, through the east side of downtown San Jose, along to Milpitas and into San Francisco Bay. And as you can imagine, being 64 miles long, there's a huge amount of diversity of wildlife and even ecosystems. So the top photo is actually near the headwaters of Coyote Creek, and it's very different from other segments of the creek. So here's a map that you can see what I just described. And the creek itself makes kind of a backwards J through the kind of east side of the valley floor. And it parallels Highway 101 a good chunk of the way. So Keep Coyote Creek Beautiful, I founded it in 2015, and I really wanted a way for people to care for and advocate for the creek, educate people about the value of a healthy creek, and also offer recreational activities so that people really feel connected to the creek and the watershed. And what really motivated me to start KCCB is that I had been working as a contractor the year before, and the city of San Jose really liked what I was doing and said, hey, we'd like to have you run the program and really try to take it another step rather than just doing creek cleanups, to actually connect people in a different way with nature. And I said, sure, I'll give it a try. And now from just being me, we have a total of 6 staff, and we really get out there and do a lot of things, which you'll see momentarily. So the organization just had a strategic plan 2 years ago, and out of it came our vision, which is that Coyote Creek is a resilient ecosystem for all living things to enjoy. And our mission revolves around 3 E's: engage, educate, and encourage. And we do that by bringing communities together to take action for, learn about, and play along a healthy Coyote Creek. So now that you've seen where the creek is and heard a little bit about organization, I want to tell you exactly share with you how we do that. So when I mentioned the 3 E's, the way I look at pretty much everything that we do is that everything is connected, whether it's people, it's nature, it's different organizations, agencies, we're all connected in some way. And through the 3 E's, we engage people to provide a voice for the creek. So lately, there have been a number of issues in Coyote Valley and Monterey Road in the central part of the creek that have had some issues come up. And so we want to be there to talk about them and share them with people. And we also do a lot of trash cleanups along Coyote Creek. So basically from about Hellier Park north to Watson Park. So it's about 4 miles where we do a lot of cleanups. And we also ask people to share their experiences. So we do that through blogs. And it's been great to get people's way of thinking about things or sharing their ideas about how they've really enjoyed the creek itself. We also encourage people to participate in fun activities. So this is kind of a recreational aspect. And I'll tell you, one of the things that people say they enjoy most about our programs is meeting new people. So that's part of what we're doing here today is we're meeting new people, but we're also doing it in a recreational sort of way. And then the last E is educate. So with that, we help people to learn about the watershed, whether it's college students who intern with us or do projects. We also have education that we rolled out last year called Scouts Adventure, and it's for K-5 classes, and they love it. It's like performance art with the watershed theme. It's really cool. And we really want to take people out to see what's so special about the urban landscape. And we do that through our BioBlitz events as well. So here I just want to share a few statistics. You can see that we have people in the picture who participated in cleanups. And we've had over 200 events in the last 10 years with over 11,000 participants. And we've cleared almost 1 million pounds of trash from Coyote Creek. And in the beginning, we started with a lot of what I call legacy trash. So people were using the creek as a dumping ground. They didn't want to pay for trash removal. But then now, because we've got a lot of unhoused people living along Coyote Creek, we're seeing that over 85% of the trash that we're removing now is related to homelessness. So unfortunately, the amount of trash we remove is per cleanup is pretty stable, which is not a good thing. We want to get to the point where it's dropping so that we can actually start doing restoration work. Another thing that I want to share with you is our BioBlitz events. So you can see that we have the bird there and the bee. And one of the things that people love is bringing their families out. And in fact, that's one of the things that Geeta has arranged for is to invite you to come to our next BioBlitz in May. And it's a great way to connect in a deeper way with nature. An example is there was a couple who were at Almond and Quicksilver Park, and they decided that they would join us for a BioBlitz. They said, gee, we come to this park and hike all the time, but we've never really seen what's in the park. And that's because we slow down and we look at things through the lens of a naturalist. And it really makes a difference. The other things that we have, I mentioned, was Scouts Adventure with me in there. And then we also have done a number of murals, which has been fun. We've worked with the Santa Clara County Parks. There's a mural at Cottonwood Lake in Hellier Park. We also have worked with a couple of schools in East San Jose, and they have beautiful murals. And we've done that in partnership with Paul J. Gonzalez, who is a muralist. And in fact, his 200th mural was with us. So I'm really excited that we were able to do that together. So I want to move into kind of thinking big about watersheds and really helping to tee this up for Geeta's talk. And when we think about a watershed, first of all, we kind of have to define it, right? So a watershed is an area of land that channels rainfall, snowmelt, and runoff into a common body of water. So there are lakes and creeks that all feed into a watershed. And in the case of Coyote Creek, I mentioned it starts in the hills, Henrico Park, and then think of all the creeks that come into it. And then finally it runs into the bay. And any water at the high points will flow to the lowest point. So the Santa Cruz Mountains is an example of a high point. And when it rains, the water is going to flow either towards Santa Cruz on the west side or into Coyote Valley on the east side. So it's a really great way of kind of thinking of a funnel and that the water flows through it. So I want to pose a question. Can you tell me what your local creek is? And while you're thinking about it, I will tell you mine. I had to look it up. So my local creek is Pulgas Creek, and it literally is across the street from me. and there was flooding there several years ago, and it was made into a culvert. And so the creek is Pulgus Creek, and it's also the name of the watershed. So if you are unsure of where your watershed, what your creek or your watershed is Shruti put in 2 links, and you can tell us what your creek is. So James, is yours Coyote Creek?
Definitely.
Okay. And then we have Calera Creek from Susan and Adobe Creek. Ah, Adobe Place. That's great. So I think it's important for us to think of how we're connected to different elements of the land. And in this case, we're talking about the water and the creeks and the watershed. So this is just a nice picture that the Valley Water has of the Coyote Creek watershed. And it shows you that there are a lot of feeder creeks that come into it. The other thing that's on this slide is it mentions that there are 321 square miles. And just to give you a reference point of what 321 square miles looks like, if you fly over Lake Tahoe, it's like 1.5 Lake Tahoes in size, just to give you a reference point. So it's a huge watershed. It's the largest in the South Bay, and a lot of people live within the confines of it. So I'm going to go through kind of a layered look at where the water comes from and kind of the man-made features that we have within this watershed. So first of all, there's the Anderson Reservoir and Dam. And right now it's going under some significant retrofit activities to mostly help prevent flooding and also to withstand an earthquake. Next, we have Osier Ponds, and that's just downstream. And you can see that the Coyote Creek Golf Course is just north of it. So during the flood in 2017, not only were Osier Ponds full, but the Coyote Creek Golf Course was flooded. And I'll tell you why in a moment. This is important. The next one is we have the Metcalf Ponds. And when I was growing up, they always had water in them, and there were people fishing. So as you drive down 101, you'll see them north of the Coyote Creek Golf Course. And then we have Hellier County Park, which has a number of culverts, but also the trail. And the trail does flood during the winter pretty much every year. And the county has to give announcements of the trail closures. And there's also levees. So the levees are holding the water back from getting into the low points, but also channeling the water. And then finally, we have flood walls, which are going up all over the bay. And in the South Bay near Coyote Creek, the one that's going, it's just nearly completed, is at the Don Edwards Coyote, the Education Center. So does anybody have any questions about these man-made features within the watershed? Then I'll continue. So I'm going to share with you about the ecosystems and then tie it together with the man-made structures. So within the watershed, we have Coyote Valley and the riparian urban zone, and then the tidal zone are kind of the 3 categories of what I would say we have. So starting up at Henry Coe Park and Coyote Valley, we've got the headwaters, the reservoirs, and then also ecosystem services, which I wanted to talk about because this is a really important part of why watersheds need to stay open. So when people talk about the value, why is it important to have these watersheds be clean and have them have open space? It's because of the ecosystem services that they provide. They provide flood protection. As I mentioned, the Coyote Creek Golf Course was a way for the floodwaters to spread out. If that wasn't there, downstream during the 2017 flood would have been way worse. There's also aquifer recharge. We have people who are growing food or use well water for their primary source of water. And we want to make sure that that stays clean for all to use, as well as having the land subsidence minimized. Did you know that the land in Kaida Valley has dropped 15 feet since the mid 1800s because of agriculture? Also, we have large mammals that need these landscapes, large landscapes to go between. Uh, People think about, oh, well, there's the culverts and there's the highway underpasses that these animals can go through. Well, Tule elk with their racks really don't want to go in a culvert, and they really don't want to go over the top of a highway. So we need to think about that. In fact, you may be familiar with the one for the mountain lion and the mountain lions in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and how they have been using that linkage to get back and forth across Highway 17. There's also fish migration, and this has been really sad, is that the steelhead used to be in the creek, and right now they're kind of stuck upstream. And hopefully with the renovations to the whole Anderson Dam seismic retrofit project, that will be alleviated. And I just want to call something out, even though I have a valley oak in the picture with the galls, the coast live oak is actually a major host for wildlife and is a keystone species. So we really want to make an effort to keep this landscape available for all living things. We have the riparian area, and within that, we've got a lot of trees like the cottonwood trees. One of the things I mentioned is there's a fair number of homeless people. And as a result, the water quality is poor because of them, but also in an urban area, people participating in illegal dumping or don't want to pay for proper disposal of chemicals. And we've also noticed that the diversity of plants and wildlife has been decreasing. And then finally, out at the tidal area, you have the brackish water of the bay and more salt tolerant wildlife, including plants and animals. But sea level is an issue. And as I mentioned, there's seawalls that are going in to try to mitigate that. It's a lot of money for a minimal benefit over the long haul. And then finally, we had a lot of land use that had started in the 1800s with agriculture. And as I mentioned, there's the 15 feet of land subsidence. And then in the 50s, we had a big housing boom and a lot of businesses were built. And then now in the 2000s, you see a lot of the channels for our creeks are now just concrete. And it's in the vein of flood control, but if you think about it, when you have something that is smooth, the water's going to go much faster. And there's also been a lot of development out at Highway 237. Can anyone guess where this image was taken from? It's on Kaida Creek. So this is just north of Kelly Park and Happy Hollow Park and Zoo. And it was after the 2017 flood. And thank goodness this area, Coyote Meadows, was open and available to flood. There was a proposal to put housing in here, and it's a good thing it didn't go in. So again, thinking about the land use, we need to have open spaces to allow for the ecosystem services I mentioned earlier, but we also need to be cognizant about human needs.
Was that showing a flooded part of the area? Or is that a creek?
So that is the creek channel, which is about 15 feet below is the normal creek channel. So this is a flooded area. And as you can see on the backside of the trestle, the water continues to go almost to Story Road. So I think it was about 5 feet from the top of Story Road.
And is that a walkway or a?
That's a trestle. It was a railroad trestle and
Railroad
it's
track. Okay.
no longer in use. Yeah.
No longer used. Okay. Hmm.
Oh, Phyllis, your creek is a concrete channel. Poor Adobe.
Mhm.
So let me get to the BioBlitz event so that you can see what you can do to maybe get to know nature a little bit better and why we need these spaces and even kind of leading up to Gita's part about looking at our landscapes and what we can do with them. So BioBlitz is really like a Pokemon for nature. And we go out and identify as many species as possible. And we do it in a limited period of time. So the bio is the species and the blitz is the short period of time. Oops. And what we like to say is that we're learning about nature together when we go out to a BioBlitz. And by that, I mean that we have docents who help to lead people. And they are, some of them are specialized in birds. Like we have some people from the Bird Alliance who come, or some of them are really into insects. And we started with just like 9 events over the course of a few years and only 400 attendees. And now we host 12 events annually, and we have roughly 750 people come during that year. And we have 30 docents that participate throughout the year.
I see a
And
lot of kids.
yes, yes, it's great. And we have a lot of families and scouts that have been coming out lately. And it's been really great to see the different types of people who are coming out together. Last month, we had a person who just graduated from college and she's trying to figure out what to do. And she came out with her friend and was just so jazzed about being at the BioBlitz. And she's going to now be a naturalist intern with us. And we've had 92 total since 2017 and a lot of different docents that have led us at, I believe it's 15 different locales. I don't want to say parks because some of them are along a trail. So it's been great. And the method that we use, there are different methods, but the method that we use is a community-driven model, and it's open to the public. We have guides, and we try to cover as much space as possible. One of the things that's a little challenging is that it's a very slow process. So you're not hiking, you're slowly walking and observing. And as a result, you don't really go very far, very fast. And we just had this, yes,
You actually see a lot then that you miss when you're hiking, right?
exactly. Yeah, it's like for me, when I walk, I see so much more than when I bike ride.
Mm.
So we just had the City Nature Challenge, which is a global event, and it was very fun. And the San Francisco Bay Area did pretty well compared to the other 700 cities. So good on us. And just to show you the tool that we use, it's called iNaturalist, where we put all the observations. And I just want to point out that there have been over 234 million observations in the, I think it's been 9 years that this tool has been around, not as long as eBird. And then it's had over 3.5 million people take observations. So it's a very heavily used tool. And I was just reading about butterflies and that there are people who are using this crowdsourced data, not necessarily to identify trends, but one of the things is just to see that there's been a butterfly of that species in that area. And so now they know to go look for it. And to have researchers go out and try to document this would just be an amazing amount of time. So crowdsourcing has been a really great way for scientists to learn more. And we just like to say that we build community around nature. So just to finish up, I want to invite you to different ways that you can get involved. And we invite you to join our board or one of our committees. Also to come out and volunteer with us or become a KCCB ambassador. And and show that you are very committed to nature in a different way and focus on Kaida Creek. And then you can also, we're on social media, so you can share our events there as well. And we do have two big events coming up. There's a National River Cleanup Day, which is May 17th. So that's an opportunity to come out to the creek, and it'll be at the Viet Heritage Garden near Kelly Park. And then the other one is in September, and it's the Coastal Cleanup Day. So those are big events nationally that hopefully you'll want to come to our event, but if not, try another locale. And also you can advocate for healthy creeks. I know you do a lot of advocacy for energy, for land use, and this is an example of a land use one. We do write letters, or I spend a lot of time at city council meetings speaking on behalf of the creek since it doesn't have a voice. And also to participate in statewide initiatives. One of the things that was really great is seeing the plastic bag bans that have been going through, and styrofoam is one of the most difficult items to pick up in a creek, and I would just love to see styrofoam banned. And here's a list of our upcoming events, and if you want to join our Eventbrite, you can follow us using the QR code there, or it's kccb.eventbrite.org. And then as I listed here are some of our upcoming events. And we do restoration with the San Francisco Bay Bird Observatory every month. Our BioBlitzes are usually in partnership with Post and the Santa Clara Valley Bird Alliance and Santa Clara County Parks. And then I just want to leave you with some of the folks and views of some of the wonderful pieces of nature that we have. And here's my contact information. So I'm happy to take any quick clarification questions before I move on to Gita.
So you have cleanups every 2 weeks, right, Tim?
Pretty much we do it twice a month. So it may be that we have them
Twice a month. Mm-hmm.
pretty close together. Thanks, Shruti.
I have one question. Have there been attempts to provide alternatives to dumping trash in the creek to the unhoused people or others who don't want to pay for trash pickup?
Yeah, so the city of San Jose is mostly where we work, and they have a number of methods. One is they have a free large trash pickup. Mm-hmm. So for example, when people are moving in or out of their houses or apartments, they could use it, but they're not. We find that people are not using that. And so a couch will be left thinking, oh, someone will want a free couch, but then someone will take it down to the creek. With regards to helping homeless people keep their area clean, there is a 12 by 12 requirement for people to keep their area clean. The city pays, I believe the number is 400 people. They have a cash for trash program, and about 400 people are participating in that specifically that are homeless. And then we hand out trash bags when we're at events, and also the city of San Jose hands out trash bags a lot. So you'll see these green trash bags all over the place. So there's a lot of ways to try to keep people from trashing the creeks.
And have your folks done exploration of why the message isn't getting out as well as you'd like?
No, we haven't. The City of San Jose's Environmental Services Department are the ones who are looking at that, since that's their responsibility is around stormwater, keeping the stormwater discharge clean, as well as helping to manage the trash loads in general.
Yeah, so communication is difficult, and so that's something that I'm thinking about is how to convince people that they have choices about where they put their trash.
Did you say that there was a cash for trash program?
Yes, so the City of San Jose runs a cash for trash program where people can receive $5 per bag, up to 4 bags per week. And there are about 400 people participating in that.
I remember reading about cash for trash in relation to Curitiba in Brazil
Mm.
as being a way that they actually cleaned up the whole town.
Mm.
But the way they were paid was they were paid with bus tokens, and not cash. So that was encouraging them to use the transit system.
Well, this program is not giving people a green cash. They're getting, they have a debit card, and that debit card is then charged with the $5 per bag.
So
Yeah.
they can use the debit card for anything.
I think there are restrictions on
There are
it.
some
I
restrictions,
don't
yeah.
know the details.
Yeah. But I think that's wonderful, and I would like to find out more about it because I think that's a it's incentives as opposed to punishments, which is great.
Agreed. Mhm.
Okay.
If there's nothing else, I will turn it over to Geeta.
I had a quick one, Deb. So do you guys work with the adopt a creek that the water, like Valley Water, has? You know, or do you even think that works well? And
Yeah, I think the Adopt a Creek program is a good one, and the city of San Jose has Adopt a Park, and those two programs kind of work in tandem. And the Adopt a Creek is great because the Valley Water provides all the tools that you would need to host a creek cleanup at any time, but in particular, the two events that I mentioned, National River Cleanup Day, which is in a couple weeks, and then Coastal Cleanup Day in September. And they organize it, they give you an Eventbrite link. You can then have people register so you know how to prepare for it. And then when you adopt a park, it can be adjacent to a creek. And so any of the litter pickup along a trail or park is going to benefit the watershed. So I think they're both
check
great
out the
programs that a lot of cities have.
What is involved in adopt a creek or adopt a park? What happens? What do you just say, I want to adopt a creek, and then what?
You have to fill out a little paperwork, and you have to see what park or what part of the creek, maybe it's Adobe Creek or another creek that's near you. And they have different sections that can be adopted. And then you would have adopted it once you've filled out the paperwork, and you get a permit from Valley Water to be able to remove trash from that area. And then, as I mentioned, you can let them know if you'd like to participate in the various cleanup events that they organize. And with Adopt a Park, the city of San Jose, and I'm sure a lot of other cities, they have various levels of support. So in some parks, people just get their own litter pickup sticks and pick up trash and leave it at the community center. Others are like at a rose garden where there's seasonal activity, and the cities may provide a trailer that has tools, and they may provide mulch so that the plants can, hold some more water. So it depends on what the park size is, what you want to do. So a lot of variation.
Oh, I was not aware of this adopt a creek or adopt a park. Is that the same as adopting freeways? You see these signs where they pick up, I suppose, trash along the freeway?
I don't know that program, but I suppose it probably would be something similar.
Interesting. Okay. Learned something. That's great. Maybe I'll adopt something around here. All right. So
Shruti, I'm trying to sign up for the ESP outing, and I'm encountering Eventbrite is wanting me to enter a password. So maybe at some point we can clarify how we can sign up for this outing, the BioBlitz, which I definitely want to attend, but I've hit a roadblock. So
I think, Deb, you can just don't have to sign into Eventbrite for that, right?
With
Okay, I'll double check.
there's a sign in with one-time code.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They need your email address, and so
I-
you do need to sign in,
Okay,
but you don't have to be a consistent user.
got it. And I do have an Eventbrite, but okay, so I've got the code now. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
What was the code?
It'll be different for different people.
Oh, I thought I signed up for it, but maybe I did. So this is Shruti, you sent a special
It's in our,
address for the Sierra Club, right?
Well, it is since we're going to be doing with KCCB, it's the same link that they are using on the website. So
Oh, it's the same
I
link.
would, I just signed up, so I would recommend, we all sign up and maybe put Sierra Club.
okay.
Okay, just so that we're clear how people are signing up. It's in the outings calendar, right?
Not our outings. It's the link from Keep Coyote Creek Beautiful.
Oh.
Oh,
It's,
it's not in our outings calendar?
no, it's not.
Okay.
So once I'm in here, it wants to know, I guess I'd sign up as an explorer, general public who want to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
James has hand up. James, go ahead.
Yes, Geeta, it can't be on our calendar because it's not a Sierra Club event, but all of Coyote Creek, all of KCCB's events are published in our chapter newsletter twice a month.
And we
Okay,
appreciate
so
that.
if someone would put it in the chat, because I think I may have used the wrong link in that case. So, okay, that'd be great. All right, shall I start? Let's see.
Yeah, I think that was fantastic.
Yeah, it was,
I've been looking at the Adopter Creek to just because it's so close, because I can't make up the cleanup events, but yeah, the one close didn't have one, but I'll check it out or join yours because yeah, you covered the whole.
one more thing. It says, how did you learn about this event? And none of the categories really fit.
Just say friend.
I'll put in friend. So my,
Yeah,
Okay.
I
All
think
right.
that's fine.
Okay. Well, let me follow on to the wonderful presentation about Coyote Creek, because in looking at greening of our cities, one of the most important ways for creatures and biodiversity to traverse our cities is along creeks. And that's why we sometimes have coyotes and mountain lions far, far away from the hills in our cities, is because they can use these wonderful creeks as corridors. So our urban areas have become more important, because it used to be that the agricultural areas, the rural areas, were where a lot of the biodiversity survived. But as it's become more monocultures into agriculture, it's actually there has been a real loss of biodiversity in the rural areas. And so our suburban areas and our cities really need to think about the fact that biodiversity is really important to our own health and to our own well-being. So while we can't be immersed in nature like this girl is in the forest, we should look at what we can do in our urban areas. And the Sustainable Land Use Committee has looked at that quite a bit. So this is a very interesting diagram. This is from the San Francisco Estuary Institute's, SFEI's urban biodiversity framework, and they've done quite a bit of thinking on this. So if you look at the chart on the right side, what you see is these dark green patches, what they call patches. So there's large green patch at the bottom, and there's smaller green patches. And then there are corridors. And the green areas in our cities are the parks, mostly, or if we've got sort of open space areas near the hills or near the bay. And then what's important are the corridors. And here you see two corridors, a dark green corridor, which is sort of like maybe a creek, a riparian corridor, and this light green corridor, which could be a street connecting parks. And then the darker green are larger patches. So the concept of patches and corridors, where patches are where there is biodiversity. It's big enough so that there's a variety of insects and creatures. There's a gene pool, but the corridors are really important because the gene pool needs to be able to move to other patches where they can mate and therefore keep the gene pool vibrant. So it's really important to not only have the green patches, but also have the corridors. And the quality of the patches depends also on the size of the patch and also what they do. Like if you just plant it with green grass, or particularly if it's plastic grass, you're not going to get very much biodiversity. You're not getting many creatures or animals or squirrels or anything in there. It's kind of a dead zone. It's kind of like a desert. So keep this concept in mind of patches and corridors. So this is something that the Sustainable Land Use Committee is looking at, which is that the right-of-ways through our cities are a huge part of the land area. If you just look at this, it's kind of fuzzy, I know, but you see the streets, you see the front yards, and then you see the houses and the backyards. But think about how wide, and what a large part of the map this street right-of-way is. And when you include the front yards, it's quite a lot of the land. So depending on the block size, it can be 30 to 40% of all the land area. So there's an opportunity there. So if you think about the potential of your street right-of-way to be green zones and to become the corridors along which pollinators, butterflies, insects, moths, squirrels, little lizards, all of these creatures can move along. If there's green zones, they're not as good at dealing with asphalt or plastic grass. So here you see on your right a city grid where there are very few trees. You can kind of see the black dots as trees, but it's mostly without trees. While here on the left, you see that these streets have trees planted along them. In fact, they've got even trees in the median. Or on the right side of the picture, you see a smaller street, and it's got street trees along both sides. So if you think about how important the urban tree canopy is to a city, the opportunity becomes clear if we would only use those right-of-ways to provide green canopy. So there's so many reasons why trees are good. They sequester carbon. They actually hold stormwater so that they really help with the stormwater drainage system because they collect and hold in their leaves a lot of the stormwater. They improve the air quality, the heat island effect. They actually, streets with a lot of trees, actually the traffic moves slower because the trees seem to hem them in. They improve health because of just the cooling, the humidity, the amount of, air conditioning that you do not have to use. And it does provide the place for biodiversity to grow and thrive. And areas that have trees have a lot more birds because there are a lot more insects. And the birds need the insects, and they need places to nest. So there are parts of the cities which are oftentimes in the poorer parts of the city where there are very few trees and mostly just cars. And then there are the wealthier parts of the city which have maybe larger lots, and they have the money to water their plants. So there is an equity issue that many cities are trying to deal with. So this is an interesting thing that recently, using Google Maps, they've come up with this green view index. And I've put the link at the bottom so that later on when you get the slides, you can look at it. But it basically uses Google's aerial view to look at the urban canopy. And this is interesting. So Vancouver was 26%, which is one of the higher percentages actually, because when we were doing specific plans, we were trying to get Sunnyvale's Moffett Park to be 18% because they were currently at about 2%. So, but you notice that cities that are very built up, Paris is 9%. But in our suburban area, we could aim for 20 to 25% at least coverage for urban canopy. Oops. So how do we conceptualize this? So just trying to think of a way to think about how do you get an integrated network so that you create this green network of green streets. Why do we have green streets? Making it a network which is safe, so it has a pedestrian priority, a bicycle priority for seniors, for kids. So they say, from 8 years old to 80 years old, you should feel safe on these streets. So because there is so much traffic in our cities, this is a concept that we have come up with, and it's not unique, to create a green connected network in each of our cities. This would be the ideal, that if it was connected, that you could walk or bike or take your wheelchair, or take your stroller, or take your, those little, what are they called? Scooters along these roads, because they would be beautiful, they'd be shaded, and then, once you do that, can you create an integrated system where you have stormwater integrated with it, so that the street trees get watered? So I'd like to go through a way that we conceptualized this. So we said that many cities already have. They've got so many plans. They may already have a bicycle master plan. And it might be, in this one, if you look at it, the dark green ones are ones that I think are already in place. The light green ones are ones that are planned, and the yellow ones are ones they would hope to plan. But so they have an implementation plan. Now, there are also, by law now, in California, complete streets plans. A complete street is a street where you have not only cars and buses, but you also have space for bicycles, and you have place for pedestrians. So this is a good example of a complete street. This is a great example of, it's not just a good, it is a great example of a complete street. So complete streets are required by law. Wherever you modify a street significantly, you're supposed to try to make it into a complete street. So many cities have complete streets committees. So your city, this is something you can check. Your city may have a complete streets committee. Several cities have that. And they identify the high priority streets to make them into complete streets, adding bike lanes, making sure the pedestrian sidewalks have ramps at the corners so that strollers and wheelchairs can go onto the sidewalks. Several cities also have green infrastructure plans. I think one of you said you were from San Jose. I'm not sure. Cupertino. But I know that some cities have, every city is required to have a green infrastructure plan now. The Regional Water Quality Control Board requires it because all the streets go into these stormwater drains, into these catch basins, and they go into pipes and they empty into the creeks. And so the bay is getting polluted because all the engine oil, the brake dust, all these toxic dusts get washed down through the storm system into the creeks and from the creeks into the bay. So the Regional Water Quality Control Board has required every city to have a green stormwater plan, but implementation is very slow. So here you can see this area here is planted. And I don't know if you can see across the street, those little black dots along the curb are where the water goes through the curb into those green zones and waters this correct area. And instead of going directly into pipes, it sinks down through the ground, gets purified, and joins the groundwater table, or it can be collected in a pipe and then the cleaned water goes into the creeks. How many of you have participated in Safe Routes to School? This is something that every school district pretty much is working on. If they have the money, they're trying to work out ways where kids can walk or bike safely to school as a way of cutting down on traffic at 8 o'clock in the morning and at 3 in the afternoon. So this is an example of when they do what they call they have walk buses and bike buses. This is a bus which is actually like all the people who are on bicycles are going together as a group in safe routes. So many cities already have some safe routes to school. And then they all have parks and open space plan. And some of them have an urban canopy plan like the city of Palo Alto has. But, as you see, they are all implemented by different cities. The street trees are by the tree people. The parks are by the parks people. The stormwater is by these stormwater drainage people, which is different than the people who maintain the streets or who do the complete streets. The complete streets groups don't coordinate with the stormwater groups. So this is all not integrated. And not only that, the funding comes from different pockets. So one parks department may apply for some funding, but it may not apply to the street trees. Or the stormwater people may apply for funding, but it won't apply to the people who plant the trees. So it's not integrated. So in order to get a real green street network, the cities actually need to create a policy so that they work together. So right now they're in silos. So this is quite a challenge to plan for an integrated solution in order to green our city streets and our city right-of-way. So how do we get an integrated green network? So here's an idea. Here's one thing that we did. We've done this for a few cities. This is the city of San Mateo. As you can see, these are all the parks. There's the creek, the Blue Creek. And we identified all the existing parks and the creek. And then we said, this has to be multi-benefit. So we need to get it to appeal to a lot of people. So we looked at the walk sheds around all the major parks. So if you can walk within 10 minutes to a park, that means that you get the benefit of that green space. So we've identified which are the areas that don't have access to any major park. These are shown in gray. And we said that these are areas where they should be planning some good major parks. So this is an issue that people can relate to. People really relate to their parks. So this is an area that one can advocate for. Then if you add into the map the schools, and you overlay the safe routes to schools, the bike master plan, if there is one. In this case, we put in the bike master plan. And you try to see whether this can touch each of the schools and each of the parks. Because oftentimes schools have a lot of trees, not all of them, sometimes they're just asphalt, but they could be a patch. So these parks are the green patches, and potentially the schools could be green patches. And the bike master plan or the safe routes to school master plan could be the corridors that connect the patches. So while you're working with things that people need and want, which is ways to get to the schools safely or ways to get to their parks while walking, you would also then be creating the biodiversity corridors in order for creatures to traverse the city, hopefully all the way from the hills to the bay. Now, there are many ways to create this green network. The first one, and this came up during the pandemic. They wanted people to be able to get out of their houses and walk around, so they created slow streets. Many cities, all cities almost created slow streets. But in order to slow down traffic, you needed to get it to be really slow, like 15 miles per hour. At 15 miles per hour, if you get hit by a car, you will not be dead. But much, much faster than that, you could be dead. So to slow the traffic down, so what are your options? You can close one end of the street, or you can do this. You put signage up. Maybe you can prioritize a portion of the street space in the beginning for only bicyclists and sort of keep the car traffic on one side. And you can start this with temporary. This is what they did during the pandemic. A lot of it was temporary, and then you get feedback. And you can definitely add the safe routes to schools into a safe network. Now, the way to get it to be an integrated green network is to plant trees along these streets. Trees really add a lot. They calm traffic, they reduce heat island effect, they improve air quality, and they provide the biodiversity corridors. Now, if you can get this green stormwater infrastructure to be on these green streets, they would water the trees automatically during winter rather than running all the water out into the creeks as fast as possible. You would actually run it into these areas and let it soak into the ground and water the plants. It cleans the water. And this is what's being encouraged in all cities anyway. And why not, I'm trying to go back now. Why not restrict the green stormwater infrastructure to the green streets rather than doing stormwater infrastructure in one place and green streets in another place, or bike lanes in one place and green stormwater elsewhere? Combine them so that people will like to bike along these places. Otherwise, people don't want to bike on non-shaded streets. And then selecting native plants to plant in those areas, which some cities are doing, like Redwood City is doing a great job of that, of planting native plants along with it. And this is important, as part of advocacy, to advocate for the education. Now, Valley Water has a great program where if you take out lawn, they give you, I think, $2 per square foot, and then they advise you on native plants that you can plant. And this is what Deb Kramer was saying. A live oak is a keystone species. It supports over 100 forms of life, including mosses and insects and bugs and worms and squirrels and owls and acorn woodpeckers, which we saw. So it's and the deer eat the acorns. And a lot of creatures actually eat the acorns, as well as there are ants that are on these trees. So an optimum spacing, by the way, for oaks, just a little factoid, is if they're 30 feet apart, that's perfect because it allows maximum amount of communication. And here's a street, a wide street with California native sycamores. So you can see how much nicer this street is for walking than a street with no trees. Now, there are lots of challenges. As Deb was asking me last time she saw this, she said, what are the challenges? There are a lot of challenges, residents as well as staff. The residents, first of all, they're resistant to change. They do not like anything to be different. They like their cars. They're worried about emergency services. So here's a good example of Redwood City. When they were doing slow streets, these were the kind of questions that came up. So will I be able to get to my house with my car? Will I be able to park my car? Will the barriers be in place all the time? How does the recycling and the trash pickup? And in Oakland, actually, one of the streets, they reopened it because they were concerned that the police cars weren't able to patrol through there. Less of an issue in some of our cities, but it was an issue in Oakland. So signage is critical. You cannot just do this because otherwise people think that there's some road repairs coming on, and then after a few days, they don't see any road repairs, and they just start ignoring the sign. So signage is really, really important. So the other part of this challenges are in the city itself. These projects are much more complex. So it's difficult for city departments they're not used to dealing with other departments. So this needs to have leadership at the very top. This sort of program needs the city council to really ask for it. And it also needs public support. So this is a good example where they were just trying to do one bike lane in Redwood City down the hill on Farm Hill Boulevard. And they had a lot of neighbors came out in protest. Now, what's interesting is the city council said, we're going to do this as a pilot program for 1 year and just bear with us. And at the end of that 1 year, they actually, I think, said that they would do it for another year. But what happens is people are resistant to change. Once this bike lane is in, they will not give it up. No one wants to give up something that they've got. This is true of so many things we find, such as parking restrictions. People resist being, restricted parking areas. But once they have the parking restriction, they don't want other people parking in their neighborhood anymore. So it's sort of this resistance to change, and you need leadership at council, and you need public support. And so you need to proceed slowly and let people adjust to change. And then when they see the results of that, then they really like it and they don't want to go back to the way it used to be. So this was a good example. So to summarize, nature needs better cities and cities need better nature. We really need both nature and our city. We need our cities to change to accommodate nature. So we need to advocate for the public to plan for green streets, and we need private residents to get together to do that. We need to incentivize trees on public and private land. So there are tree projects in every city. So, Redwood City Trees is for Redwood City. Palo Alto has a similar one. Urban Canopy, Canopy is a advocacy group for trees. So you start with temporary slow green streets. These are non-arterial streets. Arterial streets are where you keep the fast traffic and then you do the slow network, give people time to adjust, and then, make the changes permanent. I think Berkeley is a great example of a place that decided they no longer want to have traffic in their neighborhoods, and they make it impossible to get through neighborhoods with your car. But we do know that once you have slow streets, people come out. They walk, the kids come out, they start playing on the street, they're playing in their front yards. And we do believe that biodiversity will thrive if we get more trees in our city. But what we need is an integrated policy. So in your city, if you would, look up your parks department person, look up your public works department person, and see what their stormwater infrastructure is, and see what their bike what their bike master plan is, and see if they've got a safe routes to school plan, and see whether the Complete Streets Committee, it would be open to looking into this idea of that every street doesn't have to belong to every kind of traffic, that there are certain streets that should have automobile priority, and there are other streets that should be slower streets, that are safer streets, that should be for pedestrians and bicycles. And these are the streets where the Complete Streets group could help advocate for tree planting and stormwater infrastructure to be a priority in there. Once there is an advocacy, a voice for this, people realize that this is a really important thing, and it's a good thing. So the next meeting, you can see how important it is what people do in their own homes and in their own yards. So that's my presentation.